Hi everyone. This video will help you prepare for the midterm and also for your research paper. So the title is How to Draft a Thesis from a Question. And we touched on this a little bit in our stations last week, but I wanted to develop this a little further for you. So let's get started. In many classes, not just your English class, you're going to be given prompts on different topics. A prompt is a statement that is followed by a question about a topic. And from this question, you're expected to write an organized essay of several paragraphs. There are different types of organizational strategies you can employ that will provide the reader with a framework for understanding your essay. A framework also helps you organize your ideas in a complete and logical way. So, how do you get started from a question? How do you know how to organize your essay? The key is really in deciphering the question. And I just want to emphasize how important it is to have some kind of organizational strategy and layout, because it will help not only the reader follow your thinking, because if you don't have organization, then it's like a maze, right? And it will also help you get organized in your own thinking. And just when you go to research, you're going to be looking at lots of different sources, coming up with lots of different information. If you have that framework, you'll be able to plug in your research, and it will just make the writing process so much smoother. So let's start with a question. Here's the question right here. What is the problem with the industrial food chain and how can it be solved? So this question specifically is asking me about problems and solutions, and that is a very specific organizational strategy. So the essay is going to revolve around problems and solutions, the paragraphs, but also the thesis. Okay, so my thesis needs to address this question. Because it's a big question, you need to focus it, right? I can't write about all of the problems, it's just too broad. So for a paper of 4 or 5 pages, I'm going to focus just on 1 or 2 problems and solutions. So here's an example of a thesis. The problem is that we no longer have a choice about what we eat, and our health is suffering because of it. All right, so I might organize my essay this way. I might talk about the first problem, lack of choice. Then I might talk about the second problem, health problems, right? The solutions then will come after, perhaps. Solution 1, reduce control of the government and agribusiness and more education. That's the second solution. I might also organize my essay this way. I might discuss the first problem followed by the first solution, second problem followed by the second solution. It doesn't matter. It just depends on your personal preference. So if the question doesn't ask you about solutions, maybe you don't want to include these in the body paragraphs. Maybe you want to include these just in your conclusion. It kind of depends on what the question is asking, right? Because I asked for just the effects of corn, king corn, you didn't really have to go into the causes. You talked a little bit about the causes, but the focus was on the effects. So you have to read the question really carefully and make sure you're answering it completely. And also I have another note here, is that the different subtopics that I listed aren't necessarily equivalent to one paragraph. In fact, I might have 2 or 3 paragraphs dedicated to each subtopic. For example, health problems. That was one topic that you saw, right? Up here. Maybe I'll have 2 or 3 paragraphs about health problems depending on the length of the essay and also how much research I have. So that's problem solution. Let's look at question 2. What are 2 misconceptions that we have of modern farms and the realities? So what is this question asking me to do? I think it's asking me to compare and contrast, right? I have to compare and contrast the modern farm, the reality and the misconceptions of the modern farms. So my thesis needs to address that. My thesis might be the 2 realities of the modern farms are that farmers do not actually grow a variety of crops and the animals are not treated well. So then I'm going to organize my essay comparing the misconception to the reality, then the misconception 2 to the reality 2. Do you see how that's logical, right? I'll start about what people think, right? Farmers grow a variety of crops. However, that's kind of compare contrast language. But in actuality, farmers actually only grow corn and soy. And then misconception 2, animals live happy on the farms. I might develop that. And then I contrast with the reality, right? But in reality, animals are subject to cruel treatment. Again, maybe I'm having 2 or 3 paragraphs for each one of these subtopics. But I have this framework here for organizing my essay. Here's another note. Though compare contrast is the main organizational strategy, I still might be using secondary organizational strategies. For example, I might talk about causes and effects of farmers only growing corn within the body paragraph. So the overall framework would be compare contrast. However, my secondary framework in the body paragraphs, maybe I'll have a body paragraph talking about the cause and maybe a body paragraph talking about the effects, right? So it's not exclusive to just one organizational strategy. All right, question 3. That was compare contrast. We did problem solution. How about number 3? Why is corn in everything and what are the significant effects? So this question is asking me about causes and effects, so I need to organize my thesis accordingly. My thesis might be, therefore, because of agribusiness and government involvement, corn is in everything, and as a result, there are significant health and environmental consequences. So I've got the causes. It's asking me for causes and effects, and here are the effects. And there's specific language for cause effect, and you want to use that, right? Consequently, as a result, there are a lot of resources, some of which you posted on the forum, that provides you templates. So my organization then might be, let's move this to one page. Cause 1, government. Cause 2, agribusiness, right? I develop these things in 1 or 2 paragraphs. Then I talk about the effect 1, the effect 2. That's a possibility. I might also do it differently. I might go cause 1, effect 1, right? Cause 2, effect 2. It just depends on how you want to do it and how the ideas connect to each other. So it really needs to be logical. If environmental pollution is really happening because of the government or because of the agribusiness, that should come right after whatever the cause is, okay? It just depends. So again, your main organization strategy would be cause-effect. However, you might be using other organization within the body paragraph. Maybe you're comparing and contrasting, government involvement at different levels, or comparing and contrasting the agribusinesses who deal with animals and the agribusiness that deal with plants, right? Just because you're relying on one structure for the organization doesn't mean you can't employ other structures for organization between and within body paragraphs. Okay, moving on to question 4. The author says corn has improved our quality of life. Do you agree? Why or why not? So here is a different type of question. It's not asking me to compare. It's not asking me to talk about problems or solutions or the cause or effect. It's asking me if I agree or disagree, and with the author, right? So this is probably the closest to a summary response where you are summarizing the author's ideas in the introduction, but you're being asked to argue one side or the other and to agree or disagree. So in this case, I want to take a side in my thesis, and I would say, I agree, corn has drastically improved our lives for the following reasons. So then the organization of my essay will be around these reasons, right? Reason 1, it's cheaper. Reason 2, it creates an abundance of food. It levels the playing field. Reason 3, it tastes really good too, okay? So I would organize this argument essay around reasons that prove whatever my own argument is, and relating it back to the authors as well. So we have talked about 4 different structures for organizing your essays. We've talked about problem solution, compare contrast, cause effect, and argument. There are more different strategies, and these are also called rhetorical modes. I really just want to focus on these 4 because I think they're important. For the midterm, it will be helpful to be familiar with these structures in order to prepare for your writing. Before you start writing your essay about the article, you kind of want to figure out from the question, right, how you're going to organize it and outline your essay. However, though, when you're writing your research paper, it's a little bit different because I'm not giving you a question. I gave you a topic for your group research paper, and you have to come up with a question. So that means from your question, you need to narrow it down so that it's not so broad, and focus the question so that it can be developed in a 4 to 5 page research paper. And then from your own question, you're going to determine how you're going to organize the essay, what the main strategy will be. So here's an example, right? I want to compare, my question is, what's the difference between organic and non-organic labels? I'll write that. What's the difference between organic and non-organic labels? What do you think for this question here the organizational strategy will be? Did you say compare contrast? Yes, that's correct. So that's pretty narrow, I think. That's fine. I would be comparing organic labels, non-organic throughout my essay. Maybe I need to focus. That's a little bit broad. But the point is, I'm not only going to be comparing and contrasting, right? There's going to be more to it. Maybe I'm going to be talking about problems with labeling and solutions, how we can fix those problems, right? Probably focus more on deceptive labeling. So I'm going to change my question, actually. This is something you might want to think about doing too when you're brainstorming your questions and your topics. This is too broad, so I'm thinking maybe, how do organic and non-organic labels both deceive customers or consumers? That's a little bit more, that's a lot more focused because I'm talking about how they deceive consumers. So comparing and contrasting how they each deceive consumers, and then maybe I'm talking more about problems and solutions within the body paragraphs. That's the secondary organization. But it's just, I wanted to reinforce that the main organizational strategy does not limit you to only that organizational strategy. Okay, guys, I hope this helps you prepare for the midterm writing and also prepare you to come up with your own research question with your group. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next week.